Welcome to the Future is Fun podcast with your hosts, Brian Olds and Danielle Tucker. Buckle up as we explore the latest emerging technologies, business trends, and fascinating discoveries that are shaping our world today. Are you ready? Let's dive in and see what the future has in store.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Future is Fun podcast. This is episode 5, and as always, I'm joined with my incredible co-host Danielle Tucker is in the building, and you can probably see if you're watching on the YouTube version, Danielle is joined by a very special guest who's going to be joining us for the first part of the segment, and that is her husband, Devarius Tucker, in the building. What's going on, guys?
Hey, what's going on, Brian?
Doing good. So happy for our episode today. Excited to have Devarius as our podcast guest here on the Future is Fun podcast. So yeah, it's gonna be great.
Devarius, you're part of history. You're the second guest ever to appear on our show.
Okay.
And I think it's very appropriate because today, episode 5, we're going to be talking about the future of space travel. And a part of that, we're going to be recapping our trip to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville. And I went with you guys. You guys basically hosted me when I went down there. So I'm super excited that you both could kind of be here for the beginning of the podcast. So looking forward to this. And so just as a disclaimer to everybody listening to this is actually our second time recording this podcast. The first time the software didn't want to play nice, and so we're doing it again. And the reason I'm even bringing that up is because we're going to kick off this this first portion, and the reason Devarius is here as Danielle's phone a friend is because we're going to play a quick space history game. So talking about the future of space, we thought it would be cool to go back to look at some of the historical milestones that have happened. And so, Danielle, are you ready to play again?
Yes. The first time I was mediocre. And this time I still don't know if I remember everything, but that's why I have Devarius as my phone a friend. So this should be fun.
Absolutely. Well, I got 10 questions for y'all. Let's go. So the first question is, when was the first ever rocket launch, the first liquid propelled rocket launch? And so give us the decade that you think it happened in, and then we'll get to the year. The first rocket launch.
What do you think?
What decade? So
I
19.
I want to say 1960s.
Okay, I vote 1960s too.
All right. It is actually 1920s. It happened
What?
in the 1920s. Way back, way back. All right, so you get another guess. What year in the 1920s you think it might have happened?
1922.
All right. No, kind of close. It was March 16th, 1926.
Okay.
Robert Goddard, which is notable because I live in Maryland. So we have the NASA Goddard Space and Rocket Center, or the Goddard Space Center. They're going to probably sue me for that. But he was actually the scientist involved with creating the first liquid propelled rocket. And there are actually ever rockets way earlier than that. Okay, question 2. We're talking about satellites now, so we are jumping ahead quite a bit in history, just as a hint. We're jumping ahead. So when was the first artificial satellite launched? When was the first artificial satellite put into orbit around Earth?
I'm going to say in the 1950s. What do you think?
I want to say the 60s.
Okay, what is it?
All right. Danielle hit the nail on the head. It was in the 1950s, but, but not too far off. So what year do you think it happened?
1951.
All right. Devarius was actually closer because it happened in 1957. And it wasn't even the United States. It was the Soviet Union. They launched the first satellite. It was called Sputnik 1. Yep. So I'm actually going to consolidate this. I'm going to do 5 questions instead of 10 so we can keep it moving. Okay. Let me pick a juicy one. Okay. When did the first astronaut go into space? Decade first. When was the first astronaut sent into space? Human
1960s?
Devarius?
I vote the same thing, 1960s.
Look at the marriage. Like look at the unity, you know. Well, congratulations. It was in the 1960s. Danielle, what year did it happen?
1968.
All right, not quite. It was May 5th, 1961. Americans this time clutched the W on that because Alan Shepard became the first astronaut to go to space. All right, this one should be a little easier. One of the more famous milestones, the first person to ever set foot on the moon. I think we had a little preview of this when we went to the US Space and Rocket Center too, because we got to do that VR experience. But what decade did the first person go to the moon?
The 60s.
I want to say in the 70s.
Y'all wanna confer with each other?
Okay, we'll go with 60s.
All right, listen to your husband, ladies, because it is the 60s. You are correct. Listen to that. Hop up. Little marriage advice here. Guess what? It was 19. Oh, yeah. What was the year? Sorry, I almost gave it away.
Okay. What was the year?
I want to say it was 68.
Okay, 68.
So close. So super close.
Was it 67?
So further away than where you were before. It was July 20th, 1969. Neil Armstrong, of course, was the first person set foot on the moon in the Apollo 11 mission. So 1969. All right. Last question. Man, which one do I want? Oh gosh. Okay. Let's do okay, since we're gonna be talking about this, let's do this. And we're jumping ahead a little bit too into almost modern future. When were the first components of the International Space Station? Y'all know the International Space Station. It's about to be decommissioned soon. But when were the first components of the International Space Station launched into space? What decade?
70s.
I want to say 70s too.
All right. Well, it was much further closer. Let's say I think I would have been in like out of his ninth grade. I would have been in ninth grade.
Oh, well, wow, we're off.
It was no well, I don't want to get a date
Was
yet,
it
but
in the 90s?
it was in the 90s. Yes. It was
Wow.
The International Space Station is not that old, like me. So what year do you think it happened in the 90s?
1992.
I think I gave it away. Perhaps I said did I say the year, or I just said I said I was in ninth grade.
Ninth grade.
Yeah, so that would have required some complex math.
I don't know exactly how old you are, so I'm just gonna still say 1992.
Yeah, I'm 38, and it was November 20th, 1998 is when it was launched. Yes. Okay. Freshman year, Mergenthal Vocational Technical Senior High School. It was a good year. Not really, but it was a lot of fun. All right, Devarius, thank you so much for joining us, man. Do you have anything that you want to add about the future of space travel? Do you have any predictions of what you want to see happen over the next 100 years as it relates to space?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind is the AI takeover. Like, how's that going to, when it comes to software development and actually engineering rockets and stuff like that, like how's that going to increase productivity? Be curious to know with AI.
That's a sweet pull. Go ahead, Daniel.
Now, I was going to say how that's going to look would be very interesting.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think AI is just going to transform like everything. We had a future of AI episode a couple weeks ago, and yeah, I can't imagine it not. I was rewatching like Hidden Figures not too long ago, and it's crazy like how they were doing like really complex calculations on like chalkboard and like in their head essentially. And then now I feel like with artificial intelligence combined with computing, like just how fast computers are getting, we're going to see probably an evolution of that. But Devarius, man, thank you so much for joining us on the kickoff of the Future is Fun episode 5, man.
Appreciate All right, thanks. I'm glad I was able to be here and everything.
We gotta bring you back at some point. Maybe we do the future of Let's pick a topic, man. Maybe future of anime, maybe? We'll bring that back.
Sure,
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
I mean,
Hey.
That would be fun.
yeah.
Mark your calendars, people.
All right.
Talk
All
to
right,
you
see you.
soon. See you
Yeah.
later.
All right.
Well, good job, Danielle. I think you did better than last time. You got
Yeah.
yeah, this marriage thing works.
Yeah, my phone a friend definitely came through. So that is a good thing for sure.
All right, so we're talking about the future of space travel. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack, but we just got some of those historical facts, and I think it is fascinating to me, Danielle, how much has happened, really in the last like 85 years. Is kind of the when we talk about like modern space travel, and so now we're kind of at this point where things are accelerating really, really quickly. The International Space Station that we just mentioned is scheduled to be decommissioned by 2031. And so, yeah, it's a lot happening. Obviously, we have companies like Blue Origin, SpaceX, kind of taking over the future of commercial space travel. And apparently, there are literally hundreds of other smaller companies that build everything from communication satellites to they're working on like space hotels. So there is a lot happening. Is there anything in particular before we get into kind of our visit to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center? I'll give you the same question I gave to Devarius. Like, what do you kind of think the next 100 years will be like, or what are you most excited about as it relates to the future of space travel?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of what I think about is kind of like what I've seen on TV and the series The Expanse. If for anyone who's listening or who may be watching on YouTube, Expanse is the series that is on Amazon Prime, and it's basically about like hundreds of years in the future where people have like colonized space. People are being born out in space, and it's just like society is like there's a whole like society living out in space as well as on Earth. So like one thing that I think about is like what will it look like in the future for for people to be living for extended periods of time, like mass populations of people to be living for extended periods of time out in space. I think that's a very interesting thing to think about. And then also you mentioned space hotels. Like after our visit to the Space and Rocket Center and going on the G-force machine and just kind of like having like a very small taste of like what like G's feel like, I'm like, okay, going to outer space in a space hotel could be fun. And at the same time, I have to overcome the hurdle of going in a spaceship. So like I feel like it's kind of like a bittersweet thing for me. And I also think it could be like a very interesting thing to experience.
Well, they're working on all these different rocket concepts. So
Okay.
right now, the conventional way to get people to space is still strap, a couple tons of dynamite underneath of you and go, rocketing into the air. But I was looking at this one design where they think you would take off like a conventional aircraft, and then
Mm-hmm.
once it gets to a certain altitude, then the rockets would pick up and just kind of help you break through the atmosphere that way. So there might be, I think the future of space travel as it relates to things that you're talking about now, like space hotels, putting people in kind of like low Earth orbit, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, it will be more conventional perhaps
Mm-hmm.
than getting in a rocket, because I think there's going to be still a small percentage of people that actually sign up to that because there's so much that can go wrong.
Yeah, but I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see because what you just described, like kind of taking off like a plane and then maybe picking up speed closer to like exit, that I think would be very interesting to see. So, but yeah, I guess there's only one way to find out, you know.
And I wonder what companies are going to kind of take over, because how like everything's branded like here on Earth. So like imagine like if I could see like Apple having like a logo like shown on the moon, like them kind of having their own like the first Apple store on the moon and stuff like that. Like or like Amazon, like how long does it like single day delivery to get your packages on the moon? Like, like instead of Amazon Air, it's like Amazon Space. So, I
Yeah.
wonder how like other like industries not connected to space will like transform. But I do want to say, it's cool seeing Tavares here because we had so much fun at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Like, thank you so much again for hosting me. I got my Artemis shirt here. Thank you, Beverly Johnson, gifted me this, who works at NASA too, and is part of Black Speakers Network. But you had been before. I think it had been a while. And for those that aren't familiar, can you just talk a little bit about like what the U.S. Space and Rocket Center is? I know it's also home to it's in Huntsville, Alabama, which is where you guys are, and it's also home of the space camp too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. So yeah, the U.S. Space and Rocket Center is located here in Huntsville, Alabama. And really, I'll just give like the really easy to understand touristy description. But what it is it is a museum where you can go book like a day pass and learn all about space history, see a lot of the actual space like exhibits of actual rockets and things that were used for space exploration, and go and experience like what it would be like to be an astronaut for a day, essentially. So when we went to the Space and Rocket Center, we got to do some VR testing, as if we were like going into space. They have a few rides there. And then also in the summertime, they have what is called Space Camp. So this is for, well, actually, when I went to Space Camp, I was actually an adult. It was like a team building college activity type of thing. They booked it for the day and it was so much fun. But what Space Camp is for, let's say, I would say like high school students maybe who are interested in like STEM and the space program to kind of have like a first taste of like what it could look like to be in the aerospace industry. So they go, it's like an overnight experience, and they learn a lot of really cool things about space exploration. So yeah, that's a little bit about the Huntsville U.S. Space and Rocket Center. It's a really, really cool place.
Yeah, it blew my mind. I was just like, I transformed into like a little kid. Primarily, even just pulling up, you could see it from, well, even going through the airport in Huntsville, everything's all decorated, it's all space themed. So you instantly feel like you're transported into the future a little bit when you land there. So even if you're just have a layover in Huntsville, if you're going through the airport, I just highly recommend walking around. But then when you get closer to where we were, there's a huge rocket like sitting outside of the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, so that you're in like space town country. And I think it's so cool that Huntsville has actually built up like a space industry there. So I saw like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, a lot of those like government contractors down there have facilities as well. So it gave me all the, and for those of you who don't know why I'm geeking out, like I think I mentioned this before, like I definitely wanted to be like, my dream was to work at NASA. Like I wanted to be like an engineer and an astronaut, something. So having an opportunity to be there was just like surreal. But then you mentioned, the U.S. Space and Rocket Center is like a museum, but it's like interactive. So we had the opportunity to do all these different things. So we did the Apollo 11, like the VR experience, which was a lot of fun. So we strapped on the VR helmet, and then you can kind of see first person view of that. We did the multi-axis training, to your point, where it takes you and you get to experience. Do you remember how many G's they said you experienced with that?
It was one. I think that one was only one, but it was like all going towards the center of your body.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I can't remember exactly how they phrased it, but it is,
It's like a barrel roll in space.
barrel roll. Yeah, like so if you were in like an uncontrolled thing, you gotta kind
Yes.
of experience that. The G-force accelerator, which was insane.
Okay, please describe what was your thought process as soon as we were in there and it strapped on and the lights went off.
That
Can you please like narrate for us your thoughts?
yeah, my thoughts were, I was at peace if that would have been like my last, experience, at least it was with you guys. Like if we because here's the thing, like you go into what can only be described as like an actual spaceship. Like
Yes.
it's loud, it's like a lot of but they, you stand up, it's a ride, you stand up, you're strapped to the wall essentially, and they give you all these instructions like don't put your arms out or whatever. And so I have no idea what's going to happen, but it's essentially a centrifuge. So imagine being strapped to the side of a really big
Washing
washing
machine.
machine. Yeah, yeah. It was crazy. It was loud. And so, as it picks up speed, we started lifting up, right?
Yes.
And the floor, like you're no longer standing on the floor, you're like being suspended in air, but you're still strapped in. And they're like, yell if you want to get off. And meanwhile, there's these little kids in there, and I'm like, I'm not gonna be the guy to yell. And this is like 7-year-old, like, in there having a
You're
good
like, yeah,
time.
or whatever. It's like, I'm not going to be the one to yell stop.
But I kind of wanted off like halfway through. But I was like, man, and then to your point, they turn off the lights. So now
Yes.
not only are you, so it's one of those exercises where I think as humans, Danielle, and let me know your thoughts on this. I think it's it's very rare where you have to kind of just give up complete control over your own body, your own whatever. Like, I mean, I guess you can argue you do that in a plane because you're strapped
Yeah.
in, but it's a lot more comfortable. You can see. But in this situation, this one of the reasons why I don't ride like carnival rides, the ones that are like pop up and go from town to town. Like, I don't want to ride something that Jim built like 24 hours ago, and there's like 3 screws loose. Like, I'm not on that. So but it was really interesting. But I think the giving up control part was the challenging part for me. What was your experience with it?
Well, as soon as it got up to 3Gs, that's when I was like, why did we get on this ride? Because I was like starting to feel the pressure of the blood rushing to my head. And I was like, oh my gosh, why? Why did I like? I'm pretty sure I was the one who was like, yeah, guys, this is going to be so much fun. Like, let's do this. And then you and Devarius were like, okay. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, why did I even convince us to get on this? But after it was over, it was like totally okay. I was like, had to like take a breath, and I was like, okay, well, that would probably be a lot better than doing the space shot. So I was like, okay, it was either that or the space shot, and I was not about to be shot up at, I don't know how many G's that would have been, but I was not about to be shot up and then dropped straight back down. So
I didn't
that
see
was my
anybody
thought
getting on that.
process. Huh?
I didn't see anybody getting on that. I don't even know if it was
No
open.
one was getting on that ride.
But yeah, I'm okay. Do you like roller coasters though? Are you like a roller coaster person or no?
When I was younger, I liked the idea of roller coasters, and then I would always like chicken out at the last second. And since like in my adulthood, I haven't really gone on very many roller coasters, but I imagine that maybe I would at least give it a shot. I
Yeah.
may give it a shot. Like, but it depends on like what type of roller coaster. Like it can't be like a Six Flag type of roller coaster. It has to be like a Disney type of roller coaster, if that makes sense. Like something that doesn't look so scary.
So no loop de loops.
Yeah, none of those. Or at least don't let me see it.
Yeah, I'm in a unique position because I like speed, and we're like way off topic, but I like speed, but I don't necessarily like height. That's the
Oh yeah.
problem. So I can go like if ground speed, like I'm fine. We're going 600, 700, like I can go fast, but like height combined doesn't, and I get why they do it, but it just doesn't feel great to me. So also being as tall as I am, like me and Devarius, I think are about the same height,
Yeah.
even though they're like, okay, this is safe. It looks like I'm about to be decapitated or my legs about to go smash into one of those beams. And that is not a good feeling. Like, I
Oh
don't
my
like it.
God.
So,
I never thought about it from the perspective of a tall person.
yeah, most of the world don't. Like, we don't think the entire world is built for people who are 5'5". Like that's like the app, like, shirts,
Mhm.
basements, like nothing's really built for, like, if you're like over 6 foot, the assumption is, you just figure it out. And if you're under 5'5", the assumption is you figure it out. But like the world is kind of built for this like margin.
You
Um,
know, from a space exploration perspective, I wonder if there's like a specific height that most astronauts, like they try to have most astronauts be at, like when they're doing their training or whatever. Like, do you know the answer to that?
I don't. We could probably look it up real quick. While we're looking at that, I did find out something interesting recently, which is, did you know that when you get launched into space and when you first like go aboard like the International Space Station, for example, you experience like this, I think they call it like puffy face.
No.
Yeah, so your face actually puffs up. And the reason why is that when you're on Earth, so two things. One, I think a common misconception is that when you're in on the International Space Station, you are actually experiencing like true zero gravity, and you're really not. The reason why you're able to float on the International Space Station is because the entire International Space Station is actually in a perpetual state of free fall. So it's in a geosynchronous orbit with the Earth. So it's going this way, but it's also going this way. And so it just so happens that by the time the space station gets to the place where it would have hit the earth is already moved. So it's always falling. And so when you get up there, that's actually how they simulate the space travel as well. They put astronauts in an airplane, and the airplane goes up and does that parabolic like loop. Same thing. And so when you do go to space, though, you experience this puffy face because your body is used to, like, our bodies are naturally equipped to operate in Earth's gravity. And now when you get into this simulated G zero G gravity environment, your the fluids and stuff that normally would be pumped down go into your face, and it takes several weeks for it to like come back down. So everybody has this
Wow.
like puffy face for the first couple of weeks. It's really interesting.
That is interesting. Hmm.
I was like, man, I don't know. I don't want my face to get any more puffy, but I will take it for the views. Apparently there's nothing like I hear so many astronauts describe what it's like to see the curvature of the Earth for the first time. And apparently it's supposed to be this very majestic, very almost like spiritual experience that uh everybody should get a chance to see.
Wow. I don't see, I feel like we got a small taste of that when we did the Apollo 11 VR experience at the US Space and Rocket Center. But of course, like it would be a completely different thing to actually be in space and seeing it like in real time. So,
So ju-
wow.
so just for the record, you would go to like, given the opportunity, you would go to space.
I don't know.
Devarius, come back.
Mm,
I should have
I'm
asked
like
him
a
that too.
50-50 at this point.
Oh, well, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay.
Now is it the reason because what's the reason? Is it the
I just like
technology or
having my feet on the ground. Like I feel like if I were like in space, like I don't know, the idea of being in like this black, like everything that you see is just like pitch dark. And then you see, but you can see the earth. Like, I don't know, that seems like it would be really cool and also potentially really scary all at the same time.
now what about, because this is actually future of space travel. So part of, and actually I think we just got the announcement that NASA Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos's company, just got the contract to do the lunar
Mm,
mission. So Elon and Starship, they're getting ready for Mars, but the moon is the first stop to Mars anyway. So um would you feel more comfortable on a lunar, like if there was like a lunar base that kind of was like a lunar hotel, if you will? So you're still on the ground, but you get a chance to like bounce around and do all this stuff. Like, would that be a little better than just, on like a spaceship or on a space station?
I don't know. I feel like, I mean, Mars is sounding even more exciting than the moon at this point, but
Oh,
um, I feel like, Yeah, because like my initial thought was like if I were to be like in the International Space Station or something like that, just like kind of experience like the orbit, like going around the Earth, like that would be interesting. And wow, like going to the moon. I guess I never really thought about it before. Like, would I do that? I honestly I don't know.
Because the
Like I just
reality is you're probably going to get the opportunity at least in your lifetime.
hmm.
So
Okay, that's fair. I guess maybe I should maybe I should consider it. But yeah, like it's an interesting thing to think about. Like
yeah.
if I had the opportunity, would I go to the moon? Maybe. I
So
know. Oh, good.
well, I was going to ask people to drop in the comments. Let us know if you like. What's your current comfort level with traveling to space? Would you do space station, moon, Mars, or beyond, like generational ship type of thing? Drop it in the comments to let us know. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like Mars sounds more exciting than the moon. Like growing it like when I think about Mars, I think about like, okay, what if we like grow some like crops or I don't know. I just think about like colonizing it, I guess. But
You're thinking about real estate values.
yeah.
It's like I
I'm
can
like
have a
growing
whole
crops.
continent to myself.
Yeah. Like that'd be cool. But I again, like I'm also thinking about The Expanse, which is that series. But I don't know. I mean, it's good that we're having this conversation because, many years from now, like these are probably conversations that people will probably be having on a more regular basis. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, apparently there are a lot of technical challenges that exist to still getting us to Mars. So even though Elon and SpaceX, they just had the first somewhat successful test of the Starship rocket. It's the most powerful rocket like ever built. Um, and I know he has a goal to, I think they have a goal to build like one of those per week or something like that. But there's still a lot of technical challenges. So even once you get to Mars, or just the journey to Mars itself is like very dangerous because there's radiation in space, and the longer people exist in space, to your point, your muscles start to atrophy. So, even on the International Space Station, they have to work out like every day for like 90 minutes to 2 hours just to make sure they don't lose as much muscle mass, but your bones start to like lose density and stuff. So the longer we really don't know the long-term effects of deep space travel, um, as it relates to how humans would fare in the very inhospitable void of space. It's a very dangerous place. And if something goes wrong, there's no tow truck, there's no there's no AAA for like space. You just gonna be out there for a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
so there's a couple other challenges too. I just wanted to touch on. Did you hear about kind of this the problem that they're having now? This has been an issue, but I think it's getting worse with just the increased number of satellites and everything that we send into space. Space junk.
Hmm.
So apparently that's becoming a big problem now because the way we have, in humans, this is a very human thing, just like we did with the oceans and everything else. Like any pick a natural resource and we'll figure out a way to kind of pollute it. But now there are all these objects just floating around in low Earth orbit. And so it presents significant challenges to space launches overall, because if you get hit by one of these objects, even if it's a tiny little like speck of paint, it can do significant damage to whatever it is that it hits. And so one of the things that I didn't realize that countries were doing is, instead of so the International Space Station, when we say like they're decommissioning it, they're going to crash it into the ocean. There's
Hmm.
a point called Point Nemo where they just crash it into the ocean, and then most of it burns up in Earth's atmosphere, and the rest goes. But some countries also blow up their satellites in space, and it produces like all this debris. And so between that and also just other satellites that we lose like contact with, there's a lot of junk floating around up there. So much so that, we try our best to track it, but you can never be like 100%.
Wow. Okay, why blow it up though? For confidentiality reasons or something?
I guess I know Russia just did one. Um and let me see if I can find it, because I think it's like a test. So I forget what they call it, but basically it's it's like if they have to do it, then they want to know that they have the capability to do it. But part of the problem is that um these countries, like, we don't really talk to each other. Like, they kind of have like spaces like sovereign like territory, so every country kind of gets to decide their own set of rules and parameters. So it's not like they're going to call NASA and be like, hey, we're about to blow up this satellite, and tomorrow they just do it. China, they
Yeah.
just do it. US, we've done it before. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure, but if y'all know, drop us in the comments while they're blowing up rockets. While they it seems very irresponsible. But that's kind of where we are. But as we kind of wrap up the show, I know some of the things that I'm personally looking forward to, like the space tourism side, because um I would love to have a birthday party in space. I would love to. They're working on, like you said, the space hotels, and one of the companies now is focused on creating simulated gravity in space. So the way the space station will be set up, it'll spin in such a way that you won't even be aware that you are, in space, because you could be able to walk around like you would here on Earth.
Wow. Now that sounds cool. I would be willing to try that.
The simulated gravity.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and again, these are actual companies that are working on this now. And I got I gotta figure out a way to get some angel invested funds like and
Yeah.
infused into some of these companies, because I think some of them are going to do really, really well. And they also talk about, there's still this idea of like a space elevator, which you could kind of take to the edge. But the main problem with all of this stuff is just like lowering cost. And so I think what Elon has done with SpaceX has essentially, by being able to, reuse the rockets and boosters to get to space, he's able to significantly cut the amount of money that it takes to get up there. So we should be looking pretty good. So yeah, I think the future of space. My kind of final prediction is, I think the future of space is bright. I think, to Devaris's point, some of these other technologies that are kind of being ushered in right now are going to just accelerate it. I think part of the challenge is that, not the challenge, but I think one of the misconceptions about space is that it's kind of separate from what's happening down here. And it's all really, really connected. Our ability to push the cutting edge of competency to get us to Mars, there's so many innovations, so many technologies that get funneled back here. We learned about one while we were at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Remember the WD-40 example?
Yeah.
And it was like, I think WD and WD-40 stands for water displacement. And it was the 40th iteration of that product, and it was created because of the space industry. But now we get to use it on Earth like all the time. So there's all these different products and services that we get to, that improve the quality of life here on Earth. So for people that are just kind of like, oh well, we should just focus on what's happening here. I think that's a dangerous mindset, because, particularly again, the way humans mess up stuff, there's no guarantee that the earth is going to be here forever. And in addition to that, I think our ability to just, you know, boldly go where no man has gone before, it does something to the human spirit to be able to stretch our sense of imagination, our sense of accomplishment, our sense of like technical advancement. Like it does something good for kids to say, hey, this is something that we could shoot for. So I'm all about it. Obviously, I'm on the space train. Like, sign me up. Like, let's get it.
Yes, I would say my like predictions or so would be just around the idea of the average person having conversations, like normal everyday conversations about going to space. Like I think your question about like, would you go to the moon? Would you go to Mars? Like I think that was a very interesting reflection because like up to this point, like I never really gave it a thought because I didn't think it was a possibility, you know? And now it's like, okay, hearing about the things that are happening with, SpaceX, Blue Origin, and how they're really, taking steps to make it even more, I guess, available and like in the future, like, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how conversations evolve and how, like just the everyday interactions that people have, like what that will look like in relation to like space travel, going to space, and all of that stuff. So that's what I would say my biggest takeaway. And, like from the prediction side of it, like, I don't know, like what will conversations look like, in the next 20, 50, like 50 years or so, like what will those conversations look like? I think it will be very interesting to see.
I just want space mail. I want to get mail in
Yeah.
space, and then I'll
Just
be.
give me space mail.
No, I think that's very astute observations there. So yeah, we'll keep the conversation going. But you guys tell us what you think the future of space travel is going to be. What are you excited about? What are you afraid of? And let's keep the conversation going in the comments. But that kind of wraps up this episode. The future is fun, and again, we highly recommend checking out the U.S. Space and Rocket Center down in Huntsville, Alabama, when you get a chance, and get yourself some hours logged on the multi-axis trainer and the what's the other thing,
The G-force
G-force
accelerator.
All right, guys, we're done. So I'll kick it to you, Danielle, to take us home.
Thanks, everyone. And until next time, keep dreaming, keep innovating.
And we'll see you in the future.